So I get asked a lot, how is it that we know if we're in neutral pelvis, or indeed if we're stable in the pelvis in any given exercise whilst in Pilates, particularly in mat work, but in mat and reformer. So I wanted to bring your attention to a really widely used analogy used in the Pilates industry, really widely used, not one that I can take personal credit for, I'm afraid, but the analogy of the pelvic clock. The human body is a 3D structure. All of our joints and all of our movements work across 3 planes of action. We either move front to back, or we move side to side, or we move rotationally. And all of our joints and all of our body moves in combinations of those things to create any given action. And the pelvis is the same. So the pelvis will move front to back when we tuck and untuck, arching and rounding the low back. It will move rotationally when we send one hip forwards and one hip backwards, and then vice versa, the other hip forwards and backwards. So this rotational movement. And it will move side to side, a bit hard to do high kneeling, but side to side in this shifting upwards of one hip bone and downwards of the other, and then the other way. So raising one hip bone upwards, dropping the other hip bone down. There's our side to side. So again, we have front to back, rotational, and side to side. If you come to lie down on your back and place the hands so that your thumbs go in your belly button and your index fingers rest on your pubic bone, the heels of your hands or the outer edge of your hands will more or less rest onto your hip bones. And then I want you to imagine a circle between those 4 points. So pubic bone to hip bone to belly button to hip bone to pubic bone. That's our pelvic clock. The pelvic clock, if we move between those 3 planes of motion again, if we relate belly button and pubic bone as 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. Our front to back action is where we raise 6 o'clock to drop 12 o'clock. And then we raise 12 o'clock to drop 6 o'clock. So there's our front plane of movement in the pelvis. And in this plane of action, neutral is where belly button and pubic bone level out with each other. So 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock are in one straight line. 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock work the same, but in this rotation. So can you deliberately raise one hip bone, let's say 3 o'clock, and feel how the other hip bone drops back towards the floor? 3 o'clock risen, 9 o'clock dropped. And then level out, and then go the other way. Raise 9 o'clock, drop 3 o'clock. And then level out. So this rotational action, lifting one hip as we drop the other, leveling, lifting one hip as we drop the other, leveling. In that plane of motion, neutral is where the 2 hip bones are spirit level to each other. The side to side action, think of it more like a steering wheel and less like a clock. I think that's a slightly better way to think about it. But in our side to side here, keeping hold of the hip bones, imagine that steering wheel and hard steering to the right. As you do that, you'll feel one hip bone drop down towards the foot and the other hip bone raise up towards the waist. Can you then level back to 2 hip bones in alignment and then go the other way? So hard steer that steering wheel. One hip bone moves towards the heel, the other hip bone moves up towards the armpit. Take that in each direction a couple of times, finding that hard steering one way, level, hard steering the other way. Again, in that plane of motion, neutral is where we're steering neither to the left nor to the right, but the pelvis is level. So typically speaking, neutral pelvis in all 3 planes of motion are pubic bone and belly button, 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock in alignment, 2 hip bones, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock in alignment, and neither steering to the left nor to the right, but in alignment here. All of the exercises we do, but really obviously the ones where you're lying on the back, but all the exercises we do are going to challenge that stability, the ability to be able to hold those positions in relation to each other. So as we move the legs or as we move the arms, the pelvis will be dragged in one direction or the other, and our job is to try and keep 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock level, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock level, and steering straight forwards, neither left or right. Have a go, have a play around with it at home. I hope that's made it a little bit more clear and given you a little bit of insight into how your pelvis moves. Let me know how you get on. Thanks a lot.